teachers, what happened after a student had a crush on you? I was an after-school teacher when I was in high school. One of the first graders told the CL but that I was his girlfriend. The CL but was like 80% kindergarteners and 20% first graders. So they believed him, since he was the older kid. Another student told my boss that I kissed him, and there was a whole issue with my boss. It was super awkward when my boss pulled me for a meeting about training. I didn't even know what was going on. Nothing happened, simply because I made sure nothing happened. She was putting on some cute as manic pixie dream girl act like Zooey Deschanel whenever she was around me, and I would just not buy into it. Maybe she thought it would work because I was young and she was graduating. Regardless, she's either brave or dumb or both. This stuff is literally discussed at our staff meetings. It's good practice with all students, especially the ones with crushes, to never be in a room alone with them, to always leave a door open, and always inform another teacher if you do find yourself alone with a student. While still in school, she tried a few stunts that were awkward, but not necessarily over the line. She tried to add me on Snapchat after she graduated. There is no way I would add a current or former student on Snapchat, lol. College professor here didn't find out until after they were out of my CL but, and she approached me about it. She said she didn't want to look like she was fishing for a better grade or anything, and so she wanted to wait until after finals. I didn't know what to do, so I just kind of laughed and said I wasn't sure I could be attracted to someone that only managed to be in my intro class. Realized she was serious after I said it. Got awkward after that. We ran into each other a few times, but she was never in any of my classes again. In all honesty, I'm very glad she never said anything while in my class. She just gave off this vibe that would set off red flags. I'm sure it wasn't anything, but it really hit home. The do not be along with student staff lecture from earlier that year. Edit, a word. This is my old teacher's story, but I'll tell it for her. She told me that there was this kid she had that was kind of a troublemaker, but had a huge crush on her. So she made a deal with him that if he stayed out of trouble he could hold her hand whenever the CL but had to walk in the halls. She's an elementary school teacher, so the classes walk together everywhere. She said that the kid was really good after that deal. I've been teaching high school for over 20 years. It doesn't happen as often as it did when I was in my 20s, but every so often a student will have a super obvious crush on me. I just ignore it and try to avoid being alone with said student. I did have a girl give me a love letter once. It was actually a really sweet letter. I gave it back to her and explained she was being inappropriate. I told her if she did anything like that again I would have to go to the principal and get her parents involved. I technically should have done that, but wasn't sure how her parents would have reacted to her writing a love letter to a middle-aged woman. Just telling her no seemed safer. I also had a boy in my 3rd or 4th year into it who had a really obvious crush. I ran into him like 10 years later at the zoo while we were both there with our kids. He grew up to be really handsome. If we had been single at the time I probably would have slipped him my number. I wrote my teacher a love letter once as a pseudo joke. She laughed it off and so did I. But I realized after the things I wrote were true. Down the road I also realized she was actually one of the most amazing, beautiful, and intelligent women I would ever meet in my life. I hope she found the right kind of love that she wanted and deserved. I teach adults, and I had a 40-something married man from a Middle Eastern country decide that he wanted a little action on the side before he returned home. He was a mild-mannered, slightly out to lunch type, but I figured out before he left my CL but that he was trying to be a little too friendly. Absolutely nothing happened except that he sent me some kind of funny, kind of cheesy emails, which I shared freely with my spouse. This man wanted to take me out for coffee and hold my hand, but I politely reminded him that it was not appropriate. Had I done it, I could have been fired. He sent me a couple more gushy emails, but it tapered off and then stopped. Generally, some of the more socially awkward teenage girls tend to follow the young teachers around. 2 incidents spring to mind. First was a 14-year-old girl in my English CL but who used to hang around and talk to me while I was on yard duty. There were some vague grumblings from somewhere that she had a thing for me, which I largely ignored. On the bus trip to camp we were sassing each other and I said, in a very poor impression of a teenage girl, "Oh, look at me. My name is /name. And I'm so in love with tolerable DM." She went bright red and dead silent. And my thoughts went straight to, oh, crap. That was true. Awkward for a few minutes before someone sidetracked the conversation and we didn't mention it again. After she left the school she came back and visited me a few times. And when she was 18 she asked me if I would ever kiss her. Thankfully I was going through a breakup at the time and the grief from that was a convenient excuse for me to say no. Later, when she grabbed my hand, the look of blind panic on my face was probably enough to convince her that it was never going to happen. Haven't seen her since. Second one was a 13-year-old girl who said some odd things. I'd be walking past and she would call out to me, "Hey, Mr. Tolerable DM, remember me? I was in your dream last night." Usually had some sort of witty remark to dispel what she said. "Only if you were that T-Rex chasing me and trying to murder me." The last 2 times she did this she said, "Remember me? I was in your bed last night." Her friend and I both panicked at that one and told her it wasn't an okay thing to say. Later that day she said it again and I told her it wasn't appropriate. Her response was, "But I like you." I crapped myself, hunted down our head of school and brought it to the counselor. Within an hour she was sitting outside with both of them, crying, being counseled on appropriate ways to interact with staff and why what she was not okay. She left the school soon after. That was a strange one. I'm not a particularly good looking guy. I'm not a teacher, but I had a second advisory teacher. My school had a system where certain grades had a different advisory teacher on a specific day. I'm pretty sure mine was a Tuesday. And this teacher, we will call him Mr. Tie. He wore ties all the time, and I'm not creative enough to think of another name. Was an attractive, younger teacher. Tall, buff, had nice hair, and the girls were all crushing on him. Except me and a select few, because we don't sexualize teachers. That's weird. And I remember one time some girls were passing a note. He saw and decided to pick it up and read it out loud. It was something along the lines of, "Mr. Tie is so attractive. How do people pay attention in his class?" He just nervously laughed and said, "Haha, sorry I'm taken," and threw the note away. The girls' faces turned bright red and the CL but was just silent during the whole thing. Student, but this may be interesting to some. I had a crush on my 3rd grade teacher. She was really pretty and just had an awesome personality. Very nice. I didn't try or really say anything. She was young too. I believe like 22 or 23 and had just started teaching. I don't remember everything he did, but a classmate also liked her and would continually ask her out and if she had a BF and all sorts of related questions. She kept just declining very nicely and telling him to stop. I think she eventually called his parents. I didn't have a crush on her, but I had a really hot teacher in 9th grade. She was 29 at the time. She was really nice too, but married. Pretty much all the guys in my school used to talk about her and what they like to do. I don't think anyone actually tried anything though for obvious reasons. A university tar here, and several of the guys I taught had crushes on me. Would be flirty ECT, and I was very nice, but also redirect every comment back to the schoolwork, and didn't acknowledge what was happening. I think this happens to a lot of tars though, because of situational hotness. You're hot to BC, you're a tar lol. When I began interning at the upper elementary levels I realized some girls developed elementary types of crushes, like one would with Kirk Cameron in 1991. My mentor teacher had a morning welcome routine called the 3 H's, where each student would give the teacher or teachers either a handshake, high five, or a hug on their way in the door in the morning. At one point I had to respectfully ask my mentor if she could change the 3 H's to just 2 H's, handshake or high five, because at least one girl was clearly overutilizing the third option. My mentor eventually had a talk with one particular well-intentioned hugger and everything ended up fine. I taught 11th/12th grade woodworking. Student put his hand up whilst I was talking. Though I don't generally expect older students to do this. It was polite. I stopped and thought he must have a question. Instead he just blurted out "I love you" in front of the whole class. I had no idea what to do, but I didn't want to look rattled. So I said something along the lines of "No you don't. It's inappropriate and I'm not accommodating it. Your choices are either sit there and be quiet, or you can go to the safeguarding team and explain," and swiftly continued with my lesson. He never brought it up again. I had a lot of respect for the student. I really thought he could overcome a lot of barriers he had around him. He may have done that. I hope he did. There's a very strong emphasis on nip any inappropriate situations in the bud as soon as possible in a way that they won't resurface again. There was also a strong onus on highlighting the choices a learner has and has made as part of the behavior policy of the school. Although it does seem brutal, which I'm sorry for, I did what I was supposed to: fix the plumbing of my school. So I work at a small school in rural Idaho. I teach English for 11th and 12th graders who flunked out of normal English classes. One day one of my students proclaimed her love to me after school. I began to cry big tears of unconventional grief. I told her that my religion said that I could only date babies and grandmas. In reality, I coincidentally had a stroke when she was asking me all these questions. In her frustration she took my binder and tried to flush it down the toilet. The whole incident was blamed on me, of course. Even with a doctor's certificate from the mall, they made me pay $1.200 in property damage fees. Looking back though, it actually could have been me that flushed the binder. Things are really hazy when I think about that week. But I still work there and am just a few years away from retirement. I'm not a teacher, but I did have a relationship with a teacher. This was last year and it was legal. He was 21 and I was 18. He was a fianc and we made love 3 times. I really hope his wife isn't seeing this. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.